Halo Legends came out in 2010. It's a series of 7 separate stories. They're all different styles of anime. Really, it's 6 because the first 2 are Origins Part 1 and 2. But rewatching it for probably the 5th or 6th time since it came out was just another reminder of how lackluster Halo's story has been over the course of the last decade. Halo 5, Infinite, the abomination of a show that we got, where the creators of it hated Halo and the fans. So I just wanted to revisit this. If you haven't seen it and you're a fan of Halo, or if you just like anime, you might enjoy the stories, even if you're not a huge Halo person. It's free on YouTube. You can literally just go watch it there. My favorites for the stories in order would be The Babysitter, The Duel, Homecoming, The Package, Origins, The Package, Prototype, and then my least would be Odd One Out, which is just a parody where you have Spartan Leet fighting a giant monkey. It looks completely ridiculous, and it is. But they fit so much into these little, anywhere between like 10 and 15-minute stories. They do so much with it. You get full arcs, some pretty good emotional moments. If you're into animation styles, I think The Duel is really cool. I'm not sure if these paused frames that I show do it justice, but it's kind of this watercolor style. It's really neat. And at the time these came out, all of these stories were canon except for Odd One Out. And it's one of those bittersweet things for me at this point where I'm glad that these exist because I enjoy them, but it's also incredibly frustrating that the people who make Halo now just don't give a shit. They're incompetent and they prioritize fucking microtransactions over a quality game and product. And there is also the aspect of how much of a big universe Halo is, kind of like Star Wars, where there's limitless possibilities for stories, and yet they just keep circling everything around Master Chief, doing a piss poor job of it. Obviously in Infinite, they brought back a shitty version of Cortana. It was mostly nostalgia bait with no real plot. They brought forth the Banished, who just keep becoming more prominent, and if you don't read books, you probably don't even know that much about them. I've read a lot of the earlier Halo books. Lately, not as many, part of being an adult, sadly. But I love a lot of the early books. Even the Kilo 5 trilogy, I know a lot of people don't like, I enjoyed. And there's just so much out there. It's really frustrating that at this point, 343/Halo Studios has started 3 different storylines and been too scared to finish any of them in the games. They've all been kind of dog shit, and they just really don't even seem like they know what to do with Halo.
They don't know what the fuck they're doing. Do you understand that?
I don't want to ramble on too long about the state of the brand, but it is frustrating. So I'll just give a quick synopsis of each of these plots and kind of just what I like about them. Obviously, the first 20 minutes is called Origins and Origins 2. You get Cortana narrating with visuals over the history of the Forerunners, the Flood, humanity. The first part is really the fall of the Forerunners. The second is kind of the rise of the Covenant and humans. It's almost like a prolonged prologue that you see in the Fellowship of the Ring, where it's just really effective storytelling. In 20 minutes, you get pretty much the whole history of Halo, or at least the important parts, with a lot of really cool shots. I think the animation style is pretty simple but neat. They use all the original Halo music, which is nice, unlike that piece of shit show. The second story is called The Duel, and it's a pretty neat story that's kind of the origin of the title Arbiter for the Covenant. The Arbiter doesn't really believe in the zealotry of the Covenant, and because of this, the prophets essentially order that he and his clan be killed. He tries to get his wife and friend to hide and move for their own safety, but they refuse because they want to be with him. And you really get a lot of cool shots of what life is like for the Sangheili/elites. You kind of get a look at their culture and their garb, and it really leans into the samurai thing, which if you've read the books, it's very obvious anyway. The samurai honor inspired culture, and they have marks of shame and all that shit. And because the Arbiter is questioning the prophets, they send another elite who's more loyal to kill his wife and friend. He sees their bodies when he gets home from a mission, and obviously this provokes him to attack, which is what the prophet wanted to begin with. He wins a couple pretty cool battles and then faces off with the guy that killed his wife, and they actually end up both killing each other. A pretty good but tragic story, and this is what leads to the title of the Arbiter being a shameful title for centuries until Thelvadam, obviously in Halo 2, changes that. Really neat story. I really dig the art style. It's a pretty cool origin point point for the Arbiter and that entire Covenant aspect of the story. I like to look into their culture. I like to look into the mindset of the prophets and how devious they are. And in the larger world of Halo, this religious manipulation is prominent throughout the Covenant lore. So it's really cool to see a part of the earlier timeline and really get a good understanding of what it means to be the Arbiter and how big of a deal it was for Thel to bring back the glory of that title that it used to have. Homecoming is another kind of messed up story, but a really good look at the insight into the Spartan program for people who haven't read the books in particular. This one is about Spartan Daisy, and it kind of jumps back and forth between the past and present. So we see in the present, she's fighting on this planet. She's trying to help Marines that are stuck. While in the past, she tries to escape the program because she didn't want to be a Spartan. If you don't know, they were all abducted children. And she goes back to her home where she sees her clone in a wheelchair because the Flash clones, due to technological limits, got sick and died relatively young. So she contemplates killing the clone and taking her place back, but ends up not doing it. Where obviously we know because of the present timeline, she goes back to the Spartan program, but she does take a little teddy bear keychain from the clone. And as she's trying to protect the Marines escaping, she dies and they actually all end up dying. And we see the bloody teddy bear. Another sad little story, honestly, but I think it's a pretty good one. I love the stuff that gets more into the background of the Spartan program because it's a really morally interesting component of the story where they were initially kidnapped to stop a galactic civil war between humans. And the timing just worked out that when the Covenant showed up, they had these Spartans ready. And that's obviously what preserves the species of humanity. It's a very ends justify the means type argument and sacrificing the few for the many and all that type of thing, especially because it wasn't deliberate. It just worked out that way. So you get a lot of kind of post-event rationalizing of it being justified. And I really like when it zooms in on one particular person and you can see how tragic the program really is on an individual level. Odd one out is the next one. It's a pretty ridiculous little story where Spartan 1337 or Elite, who's kind of a bumbling idiot, gets stuck on this planet and he's fighting a giant monkey to try to protect some kids. Honestly, the whole thing is really goofy. It's one of those that, first of all, it's only 10 minutes, but I think you'll either find it funny or you won't. It's really subjective with that type of thing, so I'm not going to go on too long about that. The next one is a human-focused one. I guess the Spartans are humans, but you know what I mean. A regular Marine-focused one about a guy with the call sign Ghost. And we get a little flashback to a couple of years ago where he's patching up someone who's dying. He's really emotionless and just accepts that death is a part of what they do. And the girl that's dying that he's trying to patch up asks him why he can't just be human for once because he's so robotic about everything. And we see him trying to protect a base in kind of a mech suit, which is why the episode is called The Prototype. And they're trying to enact the Cole Protocol. If you don't know, the Cole Protocol is that all data related to navigation and Earth has to be purged or destroyed pretty much as soon as you encounter the Covenant so they can't get a hold of Earth's location as like a stalling tactic because we were losing so badly in the Human Covenant War. So he ignored this, which is automatically court-martial, high treason, all that good stuff. And he's trying to help the civilians evacuate as he fights off waves of Covenant in this mech suit. And you're watching him just slowly get overwhelmed and eventually his arm gets blown off. And once they've all been evacuated, he gives the self-destruct code to his suit, which is be human. And the officers in space redact the court-martial and just list him as MIA so he won't be remembered dishonorably. Again, a super simple but pretty emotionally effective little story. I think they fit a good amount of character into it. It's only like 12 minutes for this one, 13 minutes. It's a short one, but I like what they do with it. Nice little pseudo redemption arc there. And again, you get more insight into the world and kind of what's expected in this losing battle for the sake of the species. The Babysitter is maybe my favorite one. This little guy pouting in the back here is O'Brien. He's the group's sniper, and they're about to go on a mission to try to take out a prophet to throw the Covenant in chaos in a certain region and buy time. Obviously a pretty big moral victory for humans whenever they can take a prophet out, but they had to hit this really specific sniper shot in a very timely window, otherwise they won't get another chance. So he's pissed off that he's replaced to take the shot because he thinks it's some farm boy or something, and it ends up being a Spartan. It's Spartan Cal, who doesn't speak the entire time, so you assume obviously the Spartan's male, but it ends up being a female when she finally talks. And this is a nice one too, where he's a little shithead, but because she saves him a couple times and then trusts him to take the shot, he obviously owes her a lot of respect at minimum. The ODSTs take their pods, O'Brien's lands in like a swamp, and the other guys are going to try to get the equipment to get get him out because he's stuck. And Cal just goes and grabs it and throws him out because the Spartans are strong enough to do that. And then they get attacked by a brute who Cal fights off and grabs O'Brien from a waterfall and kind of gives him like a princess carry, which is a nice little bit of humor mixed into the relatively serious story. And then that brute who got thrown off the waterfall comes back again when they're trying to take the shot. And O'Brien's kind of still grumbling like, oh, hope they don't miss and blah, 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 because he's bitching. And Cal takes a hammer to the face for him. And that buys them time to take the brute down with their guns. And then she tells O'Brien he's the only one that can take the shot on the Prophet. So the mission is accomplished, but she dies. And then O'Brien's kind of left on his own at the end of the episode, forced to acknowledge what she did for him. And then he kind of gets pissed off when other people are shitting on the Spartans. This one's a little bit longer. It's closer to like 20 minutes, but this is my favorite one. I really like how it's handled. I like that he's a little shithead who gets saved over and over and has no choice but to be appreciative and respectful of the Spartans, because that's a pretty common rivalry throughout the books is between the Spartans and ODSTs, especially because the Helljumpers are known as like the crazy badasses in the Halo universe, and the Spartans are viewed as much more of like mythological to some, not real by others, maybe not even human, kind of just weirdos. So it's a pretty interesting part of the lore, and you get to see all kinds of different relationship dynamics between the Spartans and Marines throughout the series, but this episode encapsulates part of it pretty well. And the last one is the package. We get a modified version of Blue Team where it's John, Fred, Arthur, and Solomon are trying to rescue Halsey, and Halsey has been captured and is on like the capital ship of this Covenant fleet. This one has closer to like a CGI art style, and they also make Halsey look weirdly young. And what we see is essentially a high up Sangheili underestimating the Spartans. They get tricked. This gets Solomon killed. They also are flying through space, and Arthur gets killed. So John, Fred, and Kelly are left to run and get Halsey. And this one's pretty action heavy, but we see again the Sangheili honor culture where the commander in charge is kind of shitting on the major because he's like, all I know is you fought him and survived, so you're a coward who fled instead of dying honorably. And of course we get a bit of irony and that he actually ends up losing Halsey because John rescues her and he's dismantling his ship to escape. And then his slip space jump ends up pulling the major with him, who had John dead to rights in the sword duel. This one's on the lower end for me just because it's pretty much just action. It still does some kind of funky stuff like this whole ship dismantling thing that I don't think ever comes up again in Halo as far as I know. But there's some pretty cool little moments in there. And it really does give you the Spartans are unstoppable warrior feel. So those are all the stories. I definitely think it's worth checking out. Like I said, it's only less than 2 hours and it's free on YouTube. So other than a little bit of time, there's really no investment. And it's just always nice to see good Halo content if you haven't seen it before. This is probably the best show / movies that we've gotten for Halo. I really like Forward Unto Dawn, but I know a lot of fans don't. And who knows, maybe one day Halo will get back to these levels of competent and emotional storytelling with cool action mixed in, instead of just how can we make people pay $100 for the color orange or whatever bullshit they're doing next time, while they're probably going to crank out another remaster and fuck that up too. I'll leave it here for this one. If you've seen Halo Legends, let me know what you think. Try responding to comments that aren't just insults. Like and subscribe and all that shit. Thanks. See ya.